So, guys, you know how it usually goes right before camp starts? Teams pretty much lock in their roster and just wait for practice to begin. Nothing crazy really happens this close to camp, but the Giants went ahead and cut 2 players off that roster just hours before camp opens. And when you look at why these guys got let go, it's not the normal reason you'd expect. So now there are 2 open spots on that roster, and a move like that right before camp almost always means something else is coming behind it. So stick around because I've got some thoughts on exactly who I think fills those spots and why. What's up, Big Blue? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Giants. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So let me actually break down these 2 cuts quickly because the reasoning behind both of them is what really got my attention. CJ. Ravenell was actually somebody they had just brought in not too long ago. He came over after playing for the Ravens and the Titans. So this was a guy who was still working his way back, and now the Giants decided to move on from him too. Then you got Cam Jones, and this one's honestly a little funny if you think about it, because his injury wasn't even football related. From what's out there, it sounds like he hurt his ankle while he was helping somebody move. So if you're one of those guys who's always helping your buddies load up a truck on a weekend, just be careful out there, because apparently that's more dangerous than playing linebacker in this league. But in all seriousness, neither of these 2 guys were projected to be big-time contributors this year. Ravenell was more like depth on that interior line, and Cam Jones was mainly valued for special teams work. Still, when you cut 2 guys like that right before camp, it tells you the front office is clearing room for something, and that's exactly why I think there's more coming. Now, here's the thing that got me really looking deeper into this. Once you cut a guy off that D-line room, you got to ask yourself, okay, why is that specific room getting thinner right before camp? And when I looked at who else is banged up on this roster, it started making a lot more sense. Sam Roberts and Robertson-Harris are both sitting out with injuries, and we already knew going in that one of them ruptured his Achilles, so it'd honestly be shocking if he's even back this year at all, even though there's some chatter he could return. But now you got 2 D-linemen already out, and that's not a coincidence to me. That tells me the Giants are probably going to go add some depth on that interior D-line here in the next few days. I was looking around at who's still out there available, and a couple of names stood out to me, guys like DaQuan Jones and Larry Ogunjobi. Now look, I'm not out here acting like I got some inside source, I'm not dropping breaking news on you, this is just me reading the situation. But when you see guys from the same room dealing with injuries or getting cut in like a day or 2 span, it tells you where the front office's head is at. Now, let's shift over to the offense side of things because there's a name everybody's been waiting to hear an update on, and that's Malik Nabers. Big sigh of relief here because he is not on that list of guys sitting out. He's good to go heading into camp, which is honestly one of the best things I've heard all week. Now, here's where it gets interesting, though. With him being fine, some of you are probably already thinking about other receivers still on the market, guys like Stefon Diggs, Deebo Samuel, Curtis Samuel, options like that. But honestly, adding a receiver right now would be a weird move timing-wise because they've had chances to do that for weeks already, and they didn't pull the trigger, so I wouldn't read too much into that direction. What I am watching closely, though, is this receiver room battle, because it is loaded. Malik Nabers is obviously the guy as long as he stays healthy, that's not really in question, but after that, it gets murky fast. Darius Slayton is somebody I don't think has a guaranteed spot, and I know that's going to surprise some of you. Yeah, the front office clearly believes in him, they paid him, but he's coming off a core injury, and more importantly, he's never actually played under this coaching staff. He's never played for John Harbaugh, never played for Matt Nagy. Compare that to a guy like Darnell Mooney who has experience with Harbaugh, or Odell Beckham who's been in that system too, or JuJu Smith-Schuster, same thing. So when I look at that room, I actually see Calvin Austin locking down that slot role. I see Darnell Mooney and Darius Slayton both making the roster, and I do think Odell makes the team as well. Where it gets tough is JuJu Smith-Schuster. I think he's the guy who ends up getting cut in that room, and obviously Malachi Fields is going to be part of that room too. As far as the receiver room is concerned, I think it's worth pointing out just how deep this competition actually runs once you look past the first couple names. You're not just talking about 1 or 2 bubble spots, you're talking about a group where multiple guys with real NFL production are fighting for a limited number of roster spots. That's the kind of situation where camp reps and preseason snaps are going to matter a whole lot because the tape is going to do the talking more than name recognition at this point. Now, this connects right into another battle worth watching because it's not just about who makes the roster, it's about roles once they're on it. Take a guy like Braxton Berrios. I don't even think his fight is with the receivers, honestly. I think his real competition is with guys like Damon Bankston and Calvin Austin for that return job. If the coaching staff feels good about Bankston and Austin handling that role, then I think Berrios is the guy who ends up getting let go. And on the flip side, if they like Damon Bankston doing some work out the backfield at running back while also handling returns, that could be exactly what pushes Berrios out the door too. So really, when you zoom out, I see Berrios and JuJu as the 2 most likely names on the roster bubble in that group. And when I looked at the tight end spot, Thomas Fidone is also on that same list of guys currently out. And that's interesting to me because the way this league is trending, teams are running 3 tight end sets more and more. And I think the Giants are going to lean on 2 tight end looks as a bare minimum this year. So if you got a guy out, you want another body behind him who can actually catch the ball, not just block. I like Chris Manhertz and what he brings, but honestly, he's more of an extra blocker out there. That's his role. And if you already got Patrick Ricard doing that exact job, you don't really need two guys doing the same thing. So this made me think about a name still sitting out there in free agency, Jonnu Smith. Now, yeah, he had a rough year with his last team, but the year before that, he had a monster season. A guy who can legit catch the football and make plays down the field. If the Giants don't fully trust Fidone's health right now with him being out, I could see them going after a guy like Jonnu Smith to fill that gap. Again, I'm not saying it's happening, I'm just telling you the logic behind it. Now, shifting gears just a little bit within the offense, because it's not just about who's catching the ball, it's about who's throwing it too, right? All eyes on this camp are going to be on Jaxson Dart and whether he's taking that next step in year 2. That's the story everybody's watching closely. Is he sharper? Is he more in command out there? And right alongside that, everybody wants to see if Cam Skattebo looks fully healthy coming into these camp reps, because that changes a lot about how this offense operates when he's out there at full speed. Now let's flip over to the defense completely, because this is honestly where I think camp is going to get really interesting. We already touched on the interior D-line being a room to watch closely with those injuries, but let's talk about who's actually holding it down right now. I think DJ. Reader is going to be just fine holding that middle spot down, no real concerns there. On the outside of him, I expect Shelby Harris and Darius Alexander to be your starters. But behind them, that's where the real battle is, because you got guys like Kayvon Thibodeau who could see snaps there too. I'm curious to see if a guy like Chauncey Galston makes some noise, or if that rookie, Bobby Jamison Travis, steps up and forces his way into that rotation. There are also names like Zach Pickens, who's got history with Matt Nagy, and a guy like Leki Fotu who could factor in too. So that whole interior group, that's a genuine training camp battle worth following closely. Now over at corner, this one's going to be fun to watch play out. Greg Newsome is expected to be that number 2 corner heading in, but I've heard a lot of buzz about Deonte Banks really impressing this summer, and everybody's excited to see what Colton Hood brings to the table too. So I think you're looking at a real 3-way competition there, and I don't think it's settled just because one guy's expected to start. As for the kicking situation, I don't really think that's much of a battle, honestly. Sounds like Dominic Zavada has just flat out outplayed Ben Sauls early on, so we'll see how that plays out, but I wouldn't call that a real cam battle in my eyes. And at the edge spot, I expect Abdul Carter and Brian Burns to be your starters there. That part feels pretty locked in. What I'm actually curious about is Kayvon Thibodeau and whether they consider lining him up more at that defensive end spot instead of purely outside linebacker, at least in certain packages, so you could get all 3 of those guys. Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, and Brian Burns on the field together. Or maybe it's simpler than that, and it's just a straight rotation between those 3 at that outside linebacker spot. Either way, that's a story I'm going to be tracking closely through camp. So that's really what I'm watching heading into camp. It all comes back to those 2 open roster spots, and my read is it ends up being a D lineman and a tight end. Drop your predictions below on who fills those spots, and let me know which camp battle you're locked in on. I'll keep digging and bring you guys the next update. Appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.